දවස් 30ක්ම unlimited Netflix බලන්න. unlimited data pack එකක් මුළු පවුලටම unlimited fun එකක් අරගන්න. අදම active කරගන්න.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, budget expectations. Ceylon Chamber of Commerce reveals its budget 2021 wish list.
What we're sort of looking for also with the national budgets is also some consistency and continuity in some of the tax proposals already announced.
Alarm bells. 5 more persons succumbed to COVID-19, taking the death toll to 58.
We are doing this testing all over the country. At the moment, we are giving the priority to those who are under quarantine.
The epidemiology chief insists that there is method behind PCR testing.
We have to compare this with the global context.
Give and take. Travel ban in the Western Province set to be lifted in a matter of hours as some areas prepare for isolation.
Surveillance operations are conducted by using helicopters and drone cameras.
The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Asia Pacific nations ink the world's largest regional free trade agreement. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Sunday, the 15th of November, 2020.
නව සන්ලයිට් සකුරා දැන් දික්කුකල් පවතින සකුරා මල් සුවඳින්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanayaka. Now, Sri Lanka lost 5 more people to COVID-19 today. The chief epidemiologist insists that the island's virus mortality rate should be considered in a global context. Meanwhile, more areas in Colombo will go into isolation tomorrow morning. We will look into all of it in a little while. But first up is budget expectations. In today's segment, we spoke to the chief economist of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Shiran Fernando. He says that the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce expects to see consistency and continuity in the tax policies that were introduced last year and this year, while also looking for the timely enactment of some of the policies which are yet to be implemented.
The national budget 2021, which will be presented on Tuesday, I think will be definitely keenly watched. And from the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce point of view, I think aspects that we'll be really looking for, in particular on the tax side, is consistency and continuity in some of the tax proposals already announced, some which were announced last November and some during the year as the COVID impact has come about. I think what we're sort of looking for also with the national budget is also some timely enactments post the budget, which I think is really crucial for a lot of these proposals to really come through and see implementation, which has been quite key to really push forward some of the agenda and some of the proposals forward. We'd also like to see some proposals that will really maybe bring about some key reform in a lot of the areas that will propel growth and investment. And those are things that even if it's on the tax side, some things which will have maybe national economic benefit, but not really have overall impact on revenue. I think some of those proposals might be really good to see as well. Beyond that, I think the overall direction on the fiscal side will be key because at the moment with the fiscal deficit expanding in 2019 and 2020, the fiscal direction in the next few years will be very key. And that will be a timely signal to send to investors and also portfolio investors who would like to know which direction that is also headed to as well. So I think that around those proposals are sort of the expectation. And of course, what measures will the government sort of put in place to support business, especially as the economy and some of these sectors recover in the next 6 to 12 months, and then look for growth and investment opportunities.
Safeguard hand sanitizer නවතම නිෂ්පාදන පෙළ නිරෝගීමත් දිවයකට ලංකාවේ පළමු වරට හඳුන්වා දෙන මැලිබන් වෙජි ක්‍රැකර්
Crunchy veggie.
As the number of COVID-19 cases in the Colombo district continue to increase further, 5 more police areas will be isolated from tomorrow in order to curb the spread of the virus. What's more, the areas in Colombo which were isolated last Monday will also continue to be isolated until further notice. There is, however, some relief in the horizon for the people in the Western Province in general, since the travel ban which prevented them from exiting the province will be lifted in a short while at midnight. Colombo, the financial capital of Sri Lanka, is experiencing one of the toughest times and unwanted limelight. With the onset of the second wave of COVID-19, Colombo district in particular has been identified as at most risk from the virus. With that being the case, the government took the decision to place several police areas in the Colombo district under isolation. The police areas of Mattakkuliya, Modara, Blumandal, Kotahena, Grand Pass, Foreshore and Barber Street, as well as Maligavatta, Dematagoda, Vallampitiya, Boralla and Keselvatta were brought under strict isolation last Monday. In addition to that, the Grama Niladhari division of Angulana North and Angulana South in Colombo district too were isolated. These areas are to remain isolated with no entry or exit until further notice. In the government's latest move to curb the spread of the virus, 5 more areas in the Colombo district will be isolated from 5 a.m. tomorrow. As such, the police areas of Maradana, Fort, Peta, Slave Island and Dam Street will go into isolation from tomorrow morning until further notice. In addition, the apartment complexes of Metsanda Sevena, Mihijaya Sevena, Ranmina Sevena, Sirisanda Uyana and the NHS flats will too remain under isolation.
A decision has been taken to function the central bus stand and the Fort railway station. However, the public transportation cannot stop in the isolated or lockdown areas. Straight away, they should come to the destination, either the central bus stand or private bus stand that is situated in Colombo city. In addition to that, permission has been granted to function the state institutions, other statutory institutions, and apart from that, the courthouses with the health guidelines, quarantine rules and regulations. Those are situated in Maradana, Keselvatta, Dam Street, Fort, Peta and Slave Island areas. The BOI projects or the office and Export Development Board officers could function in these 5 police areas accordingly.
In the meantime, in the Gampha district, several areas were brought out of isolation this morning. It resulted in the police areas of Pamunugama, Sapugaskanda, Kandana and Mahabage being returned to normalcy. However, the police areas of Negombo, Jayala, Ragama, Kadavata, Vattala and Paliyagoda continues to be under isolation until further notice. Furthermore, the police area of Kalaniya will also be added to the list of isolated areas from 5 a.m. tomorrow.
We are going to monitor and we are going to conduct surveillance operations with Sri Lanka Air Force in order to get the conduct and behavior of the inmates of the lockdown areas. So therefore, constant surveillance operations are conducted by using helicopters and drone cameras. And as of today, we have arrested 22 suspects who have violated quarantine rules and regulations that have been published in respect of lockdown areas. In addition to that, 120 suspects have been arrested in connection with face mask offences and social distancing. Yesterday, we have arrested 21 suspects in connection with such offences.
In another development, the police areas of Horana and Ingiriya, as well as the Vakada West Gramanilidari division, were however brought out of isolation this morning. What's more, the status of isolation in the police areas of Ruanwella and Mavanella in the Kegul district, Kuliyapitiya police area and the Kurunagala municipality in the Kurunagala district was also lifted today. With many cases being identified from the Western Province, a travel ban was put in place on the 11th of November, preventing people from leaving the Western Province. That travel ban, however, will be lifted at midnight, enabling people in the Western Province to travel to other areas. Now, it is yet another day where 5 Sri Lankans perished to the deservingly feared COVID-19 virus. Some of them had been suffering from underlying health conditions. A Sri Lankan university study has already proven that the strand of the virus presently in circulation is in fact far more worse than the one the island had to contend with during the first wave. Therefore, extreme caution should be the order of the day.
Sri Lanka recorded 5 COVID-19 fatalities today, taking the overall number of coronavirus deaths in the island to 58. 2 of the victims were 88 years of age, while the other 3 were 39, 54 and 79. 3 of the 5 persons who succumbed to the virus had been suffering from underlying medical conditions. The remaining 2, however, had suffered cardiac arrest, said to have been brought on by the COVID-19 virus. In the meantime, a total of 704 COVID-19 infections were recorded today. However, Sri Lanka recorded a total of 392 COVID-19 infections yesterday, with the majority of them being identified from Colombo. The number of patients who were diagnosed with the virus from Colombo are 205. In contrast, however, the number of COVID-19 patients identified from Gampaha continues to reduce as the district reported just 40 cases of the virus. In the meantime, out of yesterday's total figure, 14 infections were detected from the Kalutara district, 4 from Ratnapura, 9 from Kegaul, 4 from Anuradhapura, 3 patients each from the districts of Gaul and Kandy, 2 infections from the districts of Jaffna and Kurunegala, while 1 patient each was confirmed from the districts of Matale, Ampara, Matara, Trincomalee and Batiklo. 94 inmates from the Busa, Valikada and Old Bogambara prisons and 4 police personnel are also among yesterday's COVID-19 infections. Due to cases being detected from prisons, Commissioner General of Prisons Tusharu Puldenia announced today that all leave for prison employees have been cancelled with immediate effect. Further, all prison employees are requested to report to their respective institutions by 8 am on Monday. Meanwhile, as of 6 pm today, the overall number of COVID-19 infections reported from the Minuwangoda and Paliagoda fish market clusters stood at 13,084. Accordingly, out of this figure, 3,106 COVID-19 cases are attributed to the Minuwangoda apparel factory cluster, while 9,973 COVID-19 cases are recorded from the Paliagoda fish market cluster. However, with 544 new COVID-19 infections being reported later in the evening, the overall number of cases recorded from the Minuwangoda and Paliagoda fish market clusters rose to 13,628. In the meantime, as things stand, the country's overall number of coronavirus recoveries rose by 171, placing the figure at 11,495. The country's active number of cases, however, has risen to 5,334.
Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira believes that Sri Lanka's relatively high COVID-19 mortality rate in the past weeks should be considered in global context. He told media today that compared to many countries which boast better healthcare systems, Sri Lanka's death rate is 2 for a population of 1 million. Dr. Samaravira also offered an extensive explanation into PCR testing, stressing that random sampling was never done away with, even after the first wave was brought under control.
We have done more than 677,000 PCR testing in our country. Out of that, actually yesterday we have done more than 13,000 tests in all our laboratories. Out of them, 9,272 tests were carried out in laboratories and other institutions that is under the Ministry of Health and other government institutions like universities, Sri Lanka Army Hospital, etc. And also the 4,438 tests has been done in the private sector, totaling 13,710 PCR tests yesterday. So likewise, we are doing in the maximum capacity in our laboratories to identify these cases. We are doing these tests in a logical manner and in a pre-planned manner. Even when there were no cases in our country in the last couple of months in September or above, we were doing this testing all over the country, covering all the medical officer health areas in all the districts in the country, what we called random sampling. We were doing the sampling from some sort of high risk group as well as low risk groups, and also from the people who are coming to the hospitals with COVID-19 like symptoms. That's why we could identify the Minuwangoda cluster also. So we are doing this in a logical manner and a pre-planned manner. So now at the moment we are concentrating more and we are giving the priority for testing those who are under quarantine, because these people who are under quarantine, when they are beginning the quarantine, sometimes we have to do PCR testing to identify whether they are already infected and whether they are patients, or at the end of the quarantine period, before ending the quarantine period, we have to do a mandatory PCR testing. So we are doing that because it is very essential to do that before 14 days completing the quarantine period, because thereafter we have to allow them to live with their normal life. So because of that, we are giving the priority for them, and also if there are patients, we have to isolate them from the other people in order to not to get the infection to other people. In addition to that, we are doing this testing to identify high risk areas like Colombo Colombo Municipal Council areas where more and more cases are reporting, as well as we are doing this testing in the hospitals where people are coming with COVID-19 like symptoms to identify cases, and actually we have identified some cases that is all linked to the Paleo-Goda cluster at the hospitals. Likewise, we are doing this targeted group and also people who are coming from road and quarantining. We have to do this PCR testing, and we are doing this PCR testing to identify cases among the high-risk groups, as well as to identify and detect whether there are any other undetected cases among the population.
Dr. Sudat Samarveera also touched on the public concerns raised over the increased COVID-19 deaths that were reported over the past few weeks.
You have to compare this with the global context. For example, by now more than 1.2 million people have died because of COVID all over the world. This equals that for each 1 million population in the globe, 160 people had died because of COVID-19. In the United States of America, already more than 234,000 people died because of COVID-19. This equals 708 people per million population in the United States has died because of COVID. When it comes to the Peru, it is 1,055 people per 1 million population. In Canada, it is 277. In Brazil, 762. And one of the Latin American countries, Cuba, where there is a very well organized public primary healthcare system similar to our country. There, the death rate is 11 per million population. In France, it is 610. In United Kingdom, it is 720. And India, more than 126,000 people died. That equals 91 deaths per each million population. In Singapore, it is 5 per million population. And in Sri Lanka, it is only 2 per million population. The World Health Organization reports these figures, so that when you compare with other countries, that I think anybody can understand where we are, how we are controlling this disease, and what we can do in future.
Now, in other local stories, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is to address the nation on Wednesday, the 18th of November at 8:30 p.m. The head of state and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa were in Anuradhapura yesterday, engaging in religious observances, some of which were organised to invoke blessings on the country.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa engaged in special religious observances which were worked off yesterday at the Mirasavattiya temple. It was organised to invoke blessings on the country and its people, seeking the malignant effects of the COVID-19 pandemic to be vanquished. The event also marked President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's first year in office. Furthermore, blessings were also invoked on Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who will be celebrating his birthday on the 18th of this month. In the meantime, the head of state visited the sacred Jayashree Mahabodhi this morning and engaged in religious observances. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa too engaged in religious observances at the Jayashree Mahabodhi this morning. In a separate development, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa will address the nation at 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday, the 18th of November.
We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, 15 Asia-Pacific economies form the world's largest free trade bloc today. The pact includes China and excludes the United States, which had left a rival Asia-Pacific grouping, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Deal under President Donald Trump. It covers 2.2 billion people with a combined GDP of $26.2 trillion.
Asia-Pacific nations including China, Japan and South Korea today signed the world's largest regional free trade agreement, encompassing nearly a third of the world's population and gross domestic product. Top officials from 15 nations that also include Australia, New Zealand and the 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations inked the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. It had been in the making for nearly a decade and was inked on the final day of the 37th ASEAN Summit hosted virtually by Vietnam. A minimum of 6 ASEAN countries in addition to the 3 non-ASEAN partners must ratify RCEP for it to come into force. And Singapore's Minister of Trade and Industry said that his country plans to approve the deal in the next few months. Supporters of the trade pact, which covers 2.2 billion people with a combined GDP of $26.2 trillion, said it will bolster pandemic-weakened economies by reducing tariffs, strengthening supply chains with common rules of origin and codifying new e-commerce rules. Among the benefits of the agreement include a tariff elimination of at least 92% on traded goods among participating countries, as well as stronger provisions to address non-tariff measures and enhancements in areas such as online consumer and personal information protection, transparency and paperless trading. It also includes simplified custom procedures, while at least 65% of service sectors will be fully open with increased foreign shareholding limits. Negotiators pushed the deal across the finish line after India surprised participants late last year by abandoning the agreement. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he pulled out over concerns about how RCEP would affect the livelihoods of Indians, particularly the most vulnerable. India, though, will be allowed to rejoin the trade pact.
Now, Sri Lanka is set to receive the same benefits of EU GSP Plus for UK from 2021. The Export Development Board says that it is important for Sri Lanka to achieve the same tariff preferences it was enjoying prior to Brexit when trading with the UK in the post-Brexit period, since the UK is the main market for Sri Lanka's exports to the EU region and the second largest export market after the United States. Once the Brexit transition period ends on the 31st of December this year, the UK global tariff will replace the EU's common external tariff, which will apply until the 31st of December 2020. The UK generalised scheme of preferences will then apply from January 2021. The Department of International Trade of the UK has announced that EU GSP eligible countries will be able to get the same tariff preferences they were entitled to earlier through the UK GSP from the 1st of January 2021. Being a EU GSP Plus beneficiary country, Sri Lanka will continue to be eligible to receive the same preferential benefits under EU GSP Plus for the UK as per their proposed enhanced framework replicating EU GSP Plus. The proposed enhanced framework of the UK replicating EU GSP Plus criteria is expected to be enforced on the 1st of January next year for a period of 3 years until 2023. The EDB says that further to the information received by the Sri Lanka High Commission in the UK, the current EU GSP rules of origin criteria will be applicable until the 31st of December in 2023, and the exemptions of the EU GSP rules, i.e. bilateral, regional, cross-regional and extended cumulation, will be available in a different terminology. A beneficiary country intending to apply for extended or cross-regional cumulation has the option to submit a joint application to the UK authority once the enhanced framework is enforced. With regard to the proof of origin of exported goods, the registered exporters system, which is in use at present, will be discontinued from the 31st of December this year. However, a similar self-declaration form or a certificate of origin form will be introduced by the UK authority. During the 3-year period mentioned, the UK will review the eligibility criteria, rules of origin criteria, and guidelines to develop its bespoke preferential scheme. The stakeholders too will be consulted in this process. Now, market activity is expected to be stagnant until the budget speech, which is set for Tuesday, marking a crucial week. Activity at the Colombo Bourse in the second half of the week is also expected to depend on the budget. Sri Lankan shares posted losses for a second straight session last Friday, weighed by industrials and communication services stocks. Now let's take a look at what we can expect at the market in the coming week.
We feel the upcoming week is also likely to be stagnant, especially in the first half of the week up to the budget speech, which is supposed to be on the 17th of November. Until the budget speech is continued and presented, we feel that most investors are likely to be on a wait-and-see approach, and after the direction of the market will depend on the budget outcome. And therefore, there is an expectation that the budget will be more favorable towards local manufacturers. So we feel that there could be buying interest into sectors such as the manufacturing sector, construction and building materials sector, and also possibly the materials sector. With that, we feel the bargain hunters are likely to enter these segments, and second half of the week will completely depend on how the budget comes out.
We will see you shortly. Stay tuned. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.